This is the Wexler family of California. Milton, the father, is a Hollywood psychoanalyst, and for the last 27 years, he has been fighting to save his two daughters, that's Alice, this is Nancy, from a terrible threat. Back in the 1930s, he had fallen in love with Leonore Sabin, a young teacher.
I went to my folks. They had a beautiful diamond engagement ring. I said, may I borrow that? So I took the engagement ring and offered it to her.
But then, a few years later, all of Leonore's brothers were diagnosed with Huntington's disease on the same day. For the next decade, Milton hoped that his wife would be spared. But in 1968, a policeman observed her on the street weaving and staggering. The diagnosis?
It's Huntington's. That's the time when I knew that hell had arrived, because I knew that she knew the devastation that was to take place with her body, where she would lose total control of her movements and her mind. By the time she was in a terminal state, she was in constant motion.
And she finally died. But she was also still when she died. And in a funny way, it was like the old mother had come back because she was still, and she wasn't moving anymore. And she wasn't desperate anymore.
Both Nancy and Alice had a 50-50 risk to develop this disease. And I had the awful job of telling them that they were at risk.
That's when Milton made his daughters the promise that he would find the cure to Huntington's disease and save them. Did you know anything about genetics?
Nothing at all. Zero.
So how does such a man begin to hunt for a gene? Well, first, he hired a recruiter to tour the country's top laboratories looking for hot young scientists to invite to some meetings.
I said, look, fellas, you're here to have a good time. I want you, first and foremost, to have some fun.
And as an extra inducement, Milton had his Hollywood friends give parties for the scientists. Is this Groucho and you?
Groucho and I were good friends.
Everybody, it seemed, was quite willing to party with Milton's scientists. He was able to lure some of the best young scientists in the country, and the goal was the same. Find the gene that causes Huntington's. Find a family with the disease, and the bigger, the better.
Every minute of every day, he's thinking about his daughters. And he's thinking about this terrible disease that killed their mother, and he doesn't want to see that happen to them.
And Milton's daughter, Nancy, heard of that extended family of several thousand people living on the shores of Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela. In 1979, she went down to investigate. Nancy immediately noticed the people looked like her mother.
The majority are under the age of 40. About 14,000 are still living. There's probably around 1,000 or more who have either died of Huntington's or are currently symptomatic.
All the inhabitants, from 2 years old to 92, everybody's affected. The woman who first had this disease came to this island 200 years ago. She had 18,000 descendants. 14,000 were still living. We had to be prepared to test all of them. We took blood, we took pictures, we traced family lines.
And then I met Pablito.
When we examined him, it was just unbelievable that somebody that young could already be so affected.
Nancy's team took blood from Pablito and from everyone in his extended family who would help. That blood was sent north to American laboratories, and when they looked at Pablito's blood, the defect was so big
that you could see it.
You could literally see it. It was huge.
It turned out that everyone in Pablito's family who was sick had a genetic defect in roughly the same place. This was a big break. Finally, they had found the neighborhood where the gene was hiding. Next, they had to get more samples from more people to zero in on the gene itself. And while they searched, Pablito died. And then one of his older sisters got the first signs of Huntington's. But then in 1993, Jim Gasella's team at MIT, looking at tiny, tiny sections of DNA from Pablito's family, saw something. So if you have a smudge above the line, like this one, or this one, or this one, you've got the disease.
If you have a smudge up here, you're going to get the disease during your lifetime.
And if it's empty, like this one, or like this one,
You have no chance of getting the disease. So we had the gene.
Jim Gasella called Nancy.
And what'd she say?
She just totally went silent.
I was stunned. I was so stunned. I couldn't even believe it.
Nancy then called her father.
We have the gene.
Milton Wexler, who knew nothing about genetics, working through his own daughters and his own foundation and his own scientists on sheer gut instinct, had engineered a major scientific achievement.
After endless research, tracking, and testing, we found it. We found the gene.
I thought, oh, great, now I can find out that I'm not going to get Huntington.
I think both of us, all of us really, we were just kind of going through all the motions, and we had decided to take it. You know, it was just a matter of when.
If either one of them came out with a bad prediction, I felt that all our lives were over, that none of us could live with that. So I felt it wasn't worth the risk.
And so the family that helped create the first test for Huntington's didn't take it.
Scientists say it won't be too many years before tests will be available that can tell each of us which diseases lie in our future. If the disease that awaited you was fatal and you couldn't do anything about it, would you still want to know?
If you have the certainty that you have the gene, and you have the certainty that you're going to die this absolutely miserable death over many years, I'm not sure it's possible to keep on living.
Whom the gods would make mad, they first give some kind of insight into the future. And I don't think always we want to have that kind of power. I think it's a potential for madness. I don't want to know when I'm going to die.
What's your dream of what you will do on the day you get that cure?
I think, first of all, I would get a huge jumbo jet and I'd go down to Venezuela to say to them, you know, this is the cure, this is the magic. Open up and take this pill and you will never have to worry about this disease. And I imagine just this incredible joyousness and everybody hugging each other and everybody crying for joy. To be able to stop something like this in its tracks is just the most staggeringly ecstasy. I can't imagine anything in the whole world that would be better.